everyone, welcome back to MyFIntelligence and another video of Day in the Life. Today you're here with me, Kat, and also Sam.
Hey guys.
And today we have Riku here with us, who's going to tell us a bit about her internship in sales and trading in summer 2020. So Riku, can you start off with telling us a little bit about yourself, maybe your program at school, and what you were up to last summer?
So hi everyone, my name is Riku. I'm a third year undergrad student at University of Toronto, and I'm majoring in mechanical engineering with a focus on mechatronics and biomedical engineering. In terms of what I did this past summer, I was working at Scotiabank on as a sales and trading analyst, and I was with the collateral management and funding team, helping with the repo traders as well as short-term government bond and bill traders.
That sounds really cool. Could you tell us a bit more about your role as an intern and what you did?
All right, sounds good. So I was supporting like 10 or so-ish traders. So in the morning, I start around 6:30 and I just run a bunch of reports in order to make sure that they have the information about their performance so far. And what I also do on the side is I also try to make sure that the traders have like enough things to sell, because it's just like a supermarket, right? You got to have something to sell, and if you don't have it, then you can't sell anything. So part of my daily job was to go out to different people who are lending us some of the government bonds and bills that we trade, and I just make sure that we have enough stock throughout the day, so to speak. So if we're ever running out of supplies, like we go out and just borrow them. So I was in charge of that as well. And after that, most of my work was just project based throughout the day. I did a couple like data visualization and data science kind of projects in order for the traders to better understand like how they can trade more efficiently in order to capture some spreads.
Can you tell us a little bit about the data visualization and data science portion? Specifically, how many technical skills did you really need for this position? Is it really more for someone who's in STEM, or do you think someone who just has a business background could do the same?
I would say that like I didn't have much knowledge about any of those before coming in, but my STEM background did help me pick that up quickly. That being said, I wouldn't think like it's a prerequisite to like have those things. The only thing I would mention is having some kind of programming experience is helpful. I use VBA for the most part on my job, but I came in with more of a Python experience. But just having that like coding mindset really helps. So at the end of the day, it's not about like knowing specific languages, but just the mindset of like how to problem solve through using code.
Awesome. And actually going off of that, did you use VBA, Excel, and PowerPoint only, or did you actually use like, do you actually get to code in your job using?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So most of my job with VBA and Excel, surprisingly, there's like very little PowerPoint, in trading in general, I would say. I think my team was like one of the places where like you actually didn't need to use PowerPoint, but that's kind of rare. Towards the end, I did a little bit of like Python projects, just as kind of an experiment. But some teams are definitely more tech heavy than others. So for example, if you're applying to roles in something like XVA, your day-to-day tends to be more technical and you're like actually coding stuff. Whereas if you're in like government bond, your chance of doing that is slightly less, I would say.
So also in your introduction, when you were first telling us about your internship, you mentioned that you work with repos in the repo market. Could you tell us a bit more about what repos actually are in the simplest terms that you can?
All right, we'll give it a try. So repo is it's basically an agreement to sell something, but then there's a flip side to it, which is that you're going to buy back that security at a later point. So the sale price and the buyback price are both predetermined. So in a sense, it's just an agreement to sell with the promise of buying back that stuff later at a higher price. So essentially, it kind of works like if you have a lot of money, it's a safe way, relatively safe way for you to earn some return on top. Whereas if you have a lot of securities like government bonds, it's a nice way for you to get a short-term cash because you can get it for a few days without like actually digging up your savings or whatever. Mostly, especially in Canada, those transactions are done with government bonds or bills for the most part. But some of them do use equity. But my team mostly focused on government bills and bonds kind of repos. So that's what my job was kind of about over the summer.
That was an awesome explanation. Thank you. Going back to your job as an intern, how would you describe your daily tasks mostly? Would you say it was a lot of mechanical work, or was it also a little bit more analytical?
A bulk of my job was like definitely on the mechanical end. It was just like press buttons, send reports, that kind of stuff. But it didn't really take up that much of my time because all I'm doing is like pressing a few buttons here and there, right? What got really analytical, I would say, is like the project part, where I had a lot of say in terms of like what I wanted to do and what I wanted to add. So I was able to go above and beyond what they like initially requested in order to make a better product at the end of the day. So I really enjoyed that aspect, and there was a lot of analytical component to it.
And earlier you mentioned that you started around 6:30 every day. Could you tell us a bit about when you usually end the day? We're just curious about your work-life balance in this position.
Sounds good. So I started around like 6 to 6:30. My days usually ended around 5:30 unless I have like some issues throughout the day. But I would just note that one of the things that happens in trading is like my first deliverable every day was due at 7 a.m. and my last thing to do wouldn't come in until 5 p.m. So I would say I was kind of like pinned down by those start and end dates, but during the day, like it sometimes ends up being chill. So I did have the time to kind of take breaks or go for walks. I wasn't just like working 12 hours straight.
That's so good to hear that you had that flexibility during the day, even though you had to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like 6:30 sounds a bit miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And did the job itself ever get a little bit too stressful or overwhelming? And if you did, how did you mitigate that?
I think this is particular to my team, but between 3:30 and 4, just before the markets close in Canada, there's a huge rush to kind of cover whatever we're short. So by that, what I mean is just again going back to that supermarket example, we sometimes figure out at the end of the day that we actually don't have anything to sell, but then we already promised the client that like we're giving you this thing, so we got to get it from somewhere. So that happens in like the last 30 minutes of market, which is pretty crazy because I sometimes have like 10 or 20 types of bonds that I have to borrow, and it just gets really hectic. Because I would email the people and just ask like, do you have it? And sometimes they don't get back to me for like 20 minutes. So it's really stressful. I would say one of the things that really helped mitigate that stress was like I was able to automate most of that process. So when I started, it was like all manual and I had to like book every ticket manually, but I was like, I'm done with this. So I decided to automate a lot of it, which cut down time and like allowed me to actually focus on reaching out to different people in order to ask, because that portion still has to be kind of manual. But then once I know that like, oh, this person has it, then it's just a matter of pressing a button in order to book all the tickets. So I would say that really minimized my stress, but it was still a little bit stressful, but
Yeah, I remember whenever we'd have intern meetings, it was always around the time that you were covering these shorts for some reason.
I know.
Sorry guys, I'm covering shorts.
I was like, I'm sorry, I need to book this. Yeah.
It was so funny, but we were always so curious what you were doing, so it's cool to finally know.
Yeah.
When you mentioned that you automated it, were you automating the email process? So were you using VBA to automate these emails, or what were you actually automating for this process?
The booking system that we use, you can actually like type a booking ticket manually, meaning like just manually type like, oh, this is how much I'm getting from who, blah, blah, blah. Or other thing that you can do is you can just make like an Excel file and upload it in order to book a whole bunch of tickets at once. So I made a macro in order to like create that Excel sheet so that only thing that I have to do is just upload that sheet and then it would go through. And that's just a lot faster and like less mistakes compared to like me typing stuff manually.
One more question for you, Riku. I'm curious, how was your training when you got this role? How did you learn to do all this, especially this really stressful part of 30 minutes when you first started?
Okay, yeah. So I was lucky enough that when I joined the team, the previous co-op was there. So she was just doing exactly what I was doing. So I had like 3 days to kind of walk through all the tasks. But at that point, it was just like press this button, press that button type of thing. And once I started in the role, I actually had my manager who was doing like a 101 on what our team did. So then at that point, I really got to understand like, yeah, why was I pressing this button? Like now I get it, right? So that was very good. And I also learned a lot just through talking daily with different traders within my team. And I got to build a good network, and that's kind of how I started getting some of those projects. So I would say a variety of learning channels, but it was overall a great experience, and I took a lot out of that summer, I would say.
Awesome. And finally, Riku, what is one piece of advice that you have for somebody who would want to do your job for this summer?
I would say don't be afraid to ask questions and raise your hand up to do something that you think is interesting. Because I think as students, it can be really intimidating to go and ask questions because you're like, yeah, what if this is a stupid question? And I felt a lot of that at first. But I think, it kind of does more harm than good because if you don't know something and if you're stuck in that role for 4 months, it's not really a great outcome. So you might as well ask like if you don't know it. And usually traders are very happy to answer your questions. So I would say really take advantage of that because it's a really precious experience that you don't get to have, if you're not in an internship.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Riku, for being with us today. I
Okay.
definitely learned a lot, and I hope you guys did as well. If you haven't checked out Riku's Land the Job video, she talks about everything recruitment, and be sure to check out our all other Land the Job and Day in the Life videos. Thank you so much, Riku, for being here with us again today, and we'll see you next time. Bye.